Hi everyone! If you're not new to this channel, you'll know that I love water-mixable oils. It's been my go-to medium for almost 3 years now, and I have a lot of experience using it. Almost a year ago, I made a video where I compared water-mixable oils with traditional oil paints, and it's been my most viewed video on this channel to this day. I've received a lot of questions and comments from you guys, and I just wanted to make a video to answer those questions. And just a quick disclaimer, this will be my own experience and research, so if your experience has been different, then please feel free to share it down in the comments. And without further ado, let's get into it. First things first, what are water-mixable oils? Well, water-mixable oils are a lot like traditional oil paints, with one exception. They can be diluted and cleaned up with water instead of using solvents like you would with traditional oil paints. Like any paint, water-mixable oils are made up of pigment and binder. And instead of using a normal linseed oil or safflower oil like traditional oil paint does, they use a modified oil which acts as an emulsifier and allows it to be dilutable with water. Also, speaking from personal experience, water-mixable oils have a lot less smell compared to normal oil paints and the mediums that are used with it. In the past, when I would use traditional oil paints, I would always have to do it outside and wear a face mask. Otherwise, I would get a terrible headache, even though I would stay away from stuff like turpentine and would only use non-toxic mediums. Water-mixable oils also have a slightly different consistency compared to traditional oils, and they have been a little bit easier to handle and work with for me, but that's just a personal preference. Now let's jump into the questions. I have divided them up into 4 categories, and I'll start with the questions about the nature and the performance of water-mixable oils. Sorry if I butcher any of your usernames here, and also I'll be paraphrasing some of the questions just to save us some time. Sigurd Bratton asks, how new are water-mixable oil paints? What brand was first and when did they release their product? So, water-mixable oils are a relatively new painting medium, which is why a lot of artists are cautious about using it. It just hasn't been tested by time yet, and it's understandable. They were first invented in the 1980s, and the first brand to actually jump on this painting medium was Winsor & Newton. They released their artisan range in the 1990s, and they were actually the first brand to offer water-mixable oils to the wider public, which is a little funny to me because their paints are closer to student grade in my experience, but yes, they were pioneers when it comes to producing water-mixable oils. They were followed by Holbein, who also released their Aqua Duo range in the 1990s, and Cobra, one of my favorite paints, actually only came about in 2008, so they're still one of the newer players in this field. Jackie's Happy He Art asks, what do you use to clean the paint off your brushes when you switch between different colors while you're painting? I actually clean my brushes with just paper towels 95% of the time. I always have them here on my desk, and I find that it works, and water-mixable oils are not as sticky as traditional oils, so if my brush is really dirty, I would just quickly dip it in the water and then brush it against the paper towel, and almost all of the paint comes off. If you need a really clean brush, like when you're using pure white, then you can always swirl it around in your water jar and it will come off very easy. I just find that paper towels alone work most of the time. Alex Berg Jones asked under one of my sketchbook painting videos how long it takes for water-mixable oils to dry. So usually it takes about the same amount of time for water-mixable oils to dry as it does for traditional oil paints, even though a lot of people out there for some reason think that they dry faster, but that hasn't been the case for me, and it usually takes them maybe 5 to 7 days to be dry to the touch. But that would really depend on how thickly you're painting and what kind of mediums you're using. For example, I paint quite thinly, and I use a fast drying formula with my titanium white paint, which helps it dry faster, especially in the places where the paint is opaque, where I used some white. And that's gonna be dry within 1 to 2 days usually. Now, if you're painting in a sketchbook and you really need to flip to the next page, I would suggest using a bit of fast drying medium with all of your paints. And if you're really worried about smudging your painting, I would just put a sheet of tracing paper over it before you close your sketchbook. I don't paint in the sketchbook so much, so I would usually just leave it out to collect dust for about a week before I close it. Christopher Go asks, do water-mixable paints reactivate after they have dried? No, they don't. As soon as your painting is dry to the touch, you can't reactivate it with water anymore. Water-mixable oils aren't actually water-based, they are oil-based. So it dries just like traditional oils through the process called oxidation. And of course it's possible to disturb the paint film within the first few days, especially if you are painting thickly, but after 6 to 12 months it will become completely water resistant. What you need to keep in mind is that your painting surface might not be water resistant. For example, if you're using a stretched canvas. So try to keep your painting in a dry environment to avoid damage to the paint film. Like I said at the beginning, I have a whole separate video on this topic alone on my channel, so if you want, you can go and check it out for more information about the difference between traditional and water-mixable oils. One thing I want to get out of the way is that water-mixable oils behave exactly like traditional oils with one exception. They can be diluted with water, and you can use them on the same surfaces and with the same techniques that you would use if you were painting with normal oils. But I got a couple of questions about this, so let's have a look. Michael Danasik asks, can you use water-mixable oils on an oil-primed surface? Absolutely, water-mixable oils can be used on all the same surfaces that you would use your traditional oil paints on. That would include stretched canvases, panels, aluminium and copper panels, even paper if you've used gesso or sizing to isolate it. I personally don't use oil primers, but if that's your ground of choice, then you can safely use it with water-mixable oils as well. Eternal Sunny asks, can you paint with acrylics over water-mixable oil paint? It's usually not a good idea to use acrylics over any oil paint, and that includes water-mixable oils. Like I said before, water-mixable oils are not actually water-based, and they dry through the process called oxidation, which would take anywhere between 6 to 12 months. And I would still prefer using oils over acrylic paint, because even after the curing process is over, oil paint still continues to dry and change for years and years to come. So if you put acrylics over it, it can really damage the painting surface. If you really must use acrylics over oil paint, then I would put some gesso on the already cured oil painting to ensure better adhesion and a more stable paint film. Aphobia asks, do you have any tips for a smoother transition when moving from water-soluble oils to traditional oils? I completely understand how difficult it could be to make a transition like that, because despite all of the similarities, water-mixable oils do come with their own workflow and their own paint consistency. So first of all, I would familiarize myself with what mediums and solvents you would be using with traditional oils, and try to find the closest possible replacements to what you're already used to working with. But at the same time, I would try to stick to solvent-free stuff and try to avoid exposing yourself to any dangerous fumes in the process. Try to use paper towels or old rugs as much as possible for cleaning your brushes, and the cleanup will be harder. There's no easy way of going about it. And if you haven't already, I would get a brush cleaner and preserver for cleaning your brushes, because it works a lot better than just normal soap, especially with traditional oils. Also, you can skip on the cleanup part altogether by keeping your brushes in oil, which is also gentler on your brushes compared to cleaning them with some soap every time after you paint. But I just like keeping my brushes dry and clean, and frankly, I'm not comfortable with a bunch of oil sitting in here because I paint in my apartment and I don't have a separate art studio yet, unfortunately. Over time, I've accumulated quite a collection of water-mixable oil painting mediums from different brands. And the ones I use most often are the 091 Painting Medium by Cobra, which improves the flow of the paints, then the water-mixable thinner by Winsor & Newton, which isn't perfect because it doesn't react well with all of my water-mixable paints, but I still prefer it over the Cobra thinner. The Fast Dry Medium by Cobra and the Stand Linseed Oil by Holbein, both of which I use together with chalk to change the properties of my titanium white paint. The Fast Dry Medium is great for the underpainting, thick texture, and if you want the painting to dry fast. And the Stand Linseed Oil together with some chalk gives more body to the white paint and makes it less opaque. And it's a lot more workable than the Fast Dry Medium, to be honest. And finally, the Glazing Medium by Cobra, which I use for oiling out and glazing in the upper layers of the painting. George Reith asks, is it okay to use water-mixable linseed oil with traditional oils? I wouldn't recommend using any water-mixable mediums with your traditional oils, and that would include modified linseed oil, because it can lead to some inconsistencies in the drying time and paint texture, and that can compromise the stability of the paint film. Also, that's not going to make your traditional oil paints water mixable, so there's no point really. And the student asks, is water mixable linseed oil also flammable and risky to use? To be honest, I only got my hands on a water mixable linseed oil quite recently, and I still prefer to use this painting medium by Cobra, the 0911. But I found a safety data sheet on the Winsor & Newton website, and apparently their modified linseed oil still retains its spontaneous combustibility qualities, so be careful. Some of you brought up Medium W by Schminke, which can be used to make traditional oils water mixable. So I decided to give it a try, and spoiler alert, I wasn't really impressed. The instructions say to mix 1 part medium with 2 parts oil paint, but I think I started out with even less than that, but as you can see, the paint was super runny and lost all of its body immediately. The application was smooth, which can work for some people, but I like my paint consistency to be a lot thicker than this. The modified paint reacts with water, so it can be used as a thinner, but you can't really clean your brushes with water effectively. As you can see, there's a lot of residue paint on the brush, and it would pollute whatever color you're trying to dip into next. For comparison, water-mixable oils wash off perfectly and don't leave any residue or traces of paint. The bottom line is that this medium does allow you to use water as a paint thinner with your traditional oils, but it completely missed the mark with everything else for me. Let me know down in the comments if you've had any experience with this medium, or if you think that I used it wrong. And in the meantime, I think I'm just gonna stick to my normal water-mixable oils. I've gotten quite a few questions about the different brands of water-mixable oils, and since I made my last video on them, I actually managed to get my hands on 3 more brands in addition to my Winsor & Newton and Cobra paints. As you can see, I've gathered quite a collection, so let's go over each of these brands. Let's start with Winsor & Newton. I still stick to what I said last time. Winsor & Newton has the lowest quality out of all of these brands, and they are rather a student-grade paint and not a professional-grade paint. So some of these paints are frankly unworkable, and they have a weird, crumbly, lumpy sort of texture. But they do have an advantage when it comes to price and availability. They are very common and easy to find, and you can find them here for as little as €6 per tube, which is an advantage if you're on a tight budget. Next one is Cobra, which is probably my favorite water-mixable oil paint line made by Royal Talents. These ones are a little bit more expensive at about €8 per tube, but you really get more bang out of your buck with these ones. They have a wider range of colors compared to Winsor & Newton, and I think right now they have about 70, but they're constantly adding new ones and releasing new painting mediums, so it's very nice to see this brand growing. They have a nice buttery consistency, and although I do see some oil separation in some of the tubes, for the most part you get a great quality and performance with these. I might be a little bit prejudiced because these ones are easily available for me at my local art store, and I can buy them in either small or big tubes, so it's super convenient for me. One of the new water-mixable oil paint brands I recently added to my collection is Holbein Duo Aqua. These paints are made in Japan, and they're unfortunately not available on the local Amazon or any of the local art stores, but I was able to finally track them down on the small German website, and I was surprised at the variety of colors that they offer. There's so many colors that are just unique to Holbein, like this anthracodone red or a benzidine yellow. And one of my favorite blues right now is this indanthrene blue, and only Holbein makes water-mixable oil paint of this color. And the same can be said about many of my other favorite colors right now, such as the Terra Rosa or brown pink. These paints also have a very high pigment load, meaning that they are super vibrant. And although they're a little bit more expensive, here in Europe they're available for about 10 euros per small tube. I think they're really, really worth it. Another brand I tried recently is Schminke's Norma Blue series. These paints have quite a limited selection of colors, but they are affordable and they have a better quality than, say, Winsor & Newton. I've been particularly enjoying using this Van Dyke Brown paint, and I've been using it as a substitute for Ivory Black, and I think that it gives my paintings a nice warm tonal touch. Schminke advertises this line as completely vegan, eco-friendly and smell-free, which is a nice added bonus. And finally, I wanted to mention a range that has nice unique colors but has unfortunately been discontinued. It's the Daniel Smith water-soluble oil colors, and I honestly had no idea they even made water-mixable oils until I came across them completely by accident. These do have some nice quinacodones here, and I'm very happy with my quinacodone rose, so I might grab another tube before they run out. But these are quite expensive, so they come at about 20 euros per tube, and I wouldn't recommend them if you're just starting out with water-mixable oils, considering that they have been discontinued. Anyway, I've made a small table for your reference if you're thinking about which brand might be right for you, and let me know if you're interested in a more thorough comparison, and I'll make sure to add it to the backlog. So these are all the questions I have for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you found this video helpful. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions left, and one day I might make part 2. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel for more art shenanigans, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!